My servant, greetings. We are here to discuss the differences between elves, men, and dwarves and how they relate to each other. While our enemy is all about friendship between the different entities, we are all about dividing them. More division means more power. So, by the end of this letter, you will come to understand how they work and how we could fulfill our ultimate goal in dividing them. Let's start with their natures. I had noticed that the incarnates of Middle-earth seem to have different timescales. That is, a scale that is dependent on their lifespan, birth, physical and mental growth, and aging. We are so excited to see that there has been some discourse about how these incarnates are living, especially the elves and dwarves. Furthermore, the men also wish to be immortal like the elves, which was our doing. We gave 3 rings to the elves, 7 rings to the dwarves, and 9 rings to the men. Unfortunately, the way they have been using the rings were not how we have wanted them to use it. Listen to me. This difference in time was created by our enemy who believes that it is for the good of all incarnates. Incarnates come in all forms. Elves, ents, dwarves, men, and hobbits are the main few. Thankfully, there are some others that are created by us. There are the orcs, trolls, balrogs, and dragons, just to name a few. Some of them were taken by me as a mockery of the initial incarnates created by our enemy. As we saw with the Númenóreans, the more they wanted immortality, the shorter they lived. That is what we delight in. We do the same for the elves by speeding up their aging. Who doesn't want immortality? It allows us to be in control. However, despite their desire, we shorten their lifespans. We have the elves, who are some of the most prominent creatures in the first stage. They were first created by our enemy, who first made us Valar and Mar through music. Then, the spring of ardor came and went, before they were made as the firstborn, which was foretold by the Valar. Little do they know, I was the first one aware of them. I was one of the Valar, and the Eldar were made shortly after my captivity. Elves and mortals have their unique timescales based on their lifespans. The Quendi, being immortal within Arda, also age with Arda as regards the Heroar, but since, unlike the Valar, whose true life was not corporeal and who assumed bodily forms at will as raiment, their being was incarnate and consisted naturally of the union of a Fëa and a Heroa. This aging was felt chiefly in the Heroa. This, as the Eldar say, was slowly consumed by the Fëa, until instead of dying and being discarded to dissolution, it became absorbed and eventually became no more than a memory of its habitation of old, which the Fëa remained. This they became or have now become mostly invisible to human eyes. Thus, there would be the similar resemblance of the timescales of the elves and men, as they both reach maturity at the age of 20 and remain in full physical vigor until the age of 60. However, if we look at the years lived alone, 20 and 60 years old mean very different things to elves and men. When an elf child becomes an elf maiden, for example, she would reach the age of 2880 at maturity as she reaches 20 years old in maturity years. Men would be 20. However, we have found a way to shorten this so that the elves age faster. Then, we would tell them that this is just what happens with the times. As times go on, they must age faster, leading to their dwindling. We hated what happened in the First Age, when Glorfindel and Actelion defeated some of our allies. We need weaker elves. There are many ways we do this. In the First Age, most elves are believed to age at a rate of 144 to 1, but as life happens, they start aging faster. For example, the Avari would age faster than an elf who would not be Avari. An Avari, or the Unwilling, would be by definition an elf who refuses to take the great journey to Valinor, thus choosing to remain in the wild, so to speak, or in Middle-earth. We need more elves like this. This is what our subjects call the fall of the elves and the dominion of men. They mainly describe it as such concerning battles, as more elves fought in the First Age rather than the second or third. However, little do they know, there is a deeper and darker meaning to this fall of elves, which is evident by their speed of aging. While they are immortal just like the others, their spirits fade after a certain point of time. This is because regardless of their state in life, all incarnates of Middle-earth must grow weary of the ways of their world. Also, when the Navari refuses to sail west, they had already chosen Earth over our enemies' view of paradise. The promise made to the Eldar, the High Elves, not to other varieties, they had long before made their irrevocable choice, preferring Middle-earth to paradise, for their sufferings in the struggle which the Prime Dark Lord had still to be fulfilled, that they should always be able to leave Middle-earth if they wished and pass over sea. This is our worst fear, that anyone would dare sail west. We hate when such a being would seek realms of peace and hope. We want them to suffer, but unfortunately, a lot of elves will land there anyways. This was the basis of my revenge with Ungoliant. See, we take this very seriously. Most incarnates don't know why we seek revenge and our purpose of seeking it. The real reason is that we seek revenge because we are against what our enemy stands for. Together, we set forth the Unlight, now the Unlight of Ungoliant, after she found me as I envied the kingdom of Mamre. This was where things seemed to be no more, and Ungoliant made ropes for me to climb on so I could fulfill my destiny wounding the trees. While I wounded the trees, that was not enough. Ungoliant would still have to suck each root to ensure the trees' deaths. Let me explain. Much like the spring of Arda, there was a festival near the two trees where the Vala and some elves were seen before Mamun. This is what we are trying to destroy, as we loathe when the incarnates celebrate in joy, peace, and victory and vow to do anything to destroy that peace. This is just the hard truth of the elves, as the subtlety of our work comes into play as they age faster and faster, from a rate of 144 to 1 in the first age to 72 or even 48 by the end of the third age. You can see as the Numenorians, we convinced them that they needed immortality, yet despite their plans, their lifespans were actually shorter and shorter as they went on. However, with the elves, this was caused by the weariness of staying in Middle-earth. We want to throw them out. That's our greatest plan. It's about time they wane. They have been the backbone of the story of the First Age. They are now convinced that it is just time for the men, when really, it's time for us. And lastly, as for the dwarves, they were initially created by Aule against the will of Eru. Much like the men and Numenorians, we have successfully convinced some of the dwarves to take our side in the War of the Last Alliance, which occurred shortly after the downfall of Numenor. We were really on a roll there. We figured that much like our fair zone, dwarves are beings of action. They were initially created to be as hard as stone by Aule for that purpose, and somehow our enemy was able to repent and accept the dwarves as servants of our enemy. But what they don't know is that this gives us some upper ground. Elves and dwarves have a bit of a rivalry. While they got along well in the first stage, this was before we convinced them to separate the two, which was our doing thanks to the Silmarils. Furthermore, Gandalf seems to want to set up Legolas and Gimli, an elf and dwarf, after a long-standing feud between the two beings. This is the worst thing I could ever imagine happening to two vastly different types of beings. Thankfully, they don't always see eye to eye, as Legolas isn't interested in seeing the glittering caves, and by then, we had just exhausted them with battle. This is dwarf territory. Never mind that elves and dwarves actually have some similarities, such as their ability to craft despite their differing spaces. But we don't want them to believe this. Our enemy knows the similarities they have and how they can achieve common ground in order to fulfill their common goal of destroying us. In return, we highlight the differences between elves and men, elves and dwarves, dwarves and men. Together, we can overtake Middle-earth. Your master, Melkor Morgoth. As we saw with the Numenorians, the more they wanted immortality, the shorter they lived. They